Hi, everybody. I'm Lily. I was just saying to the panelists earlier that I think it's so rare and so important to be able to have these intergenerational conversations around technology and social media use, especially with young people and people of our generation sharing their perspectives with parents and policymakers, because still I'm 23, and when it comes to talking about screen time with my mom, all I can say is like, Mom, stop asking me about it. So to be able to be candid, I think is rare and really important, and I'm excited to hear what all of you have to say, even though my mom is here, so like, keep it chill. So we've all been interconnected online for as long as we can remember, and that has a lot of upsides to it. So I'd love to start by talking about what are some of the pros of interconnectedness via technology. Ronak, you are a first-generation American, and you have lots of family still in India. So tell us what role the internet and social media have played in keeping you connected and how that connection helps shape you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So most of my family lives in India, which is like the other side of the world. And while I love to visit, it's not something that I can practically do very often. So without social media, it would have become very easy to become disconnected with my grandma and my cousins. But because of social media, I feel like I can be there for every religious festival, for every graduation, and they feel the same way. Like, I can still keep in touch with my grandma and keep her updated. So I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that social media was created to help us be connected, and we are very quick to vilify social media because there are a couple downsides, well, many downsides that are also very substantial, but the heart of social media is human connectedness, and I have very much seen that in my lifetime.
Beautiful. Yeah, as far as family conversation goes, Kate, I wanted to ask, you work with and advocate for military kids and teens through the organization Bloom. Could you tell us what online communities have meant to you and can mean to the military kids you work with?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Kate. I am the Director of Communications at Bloom, an organization made by military teens for military teens. And basically we focus on advocating, connecting, and empowering military teens. And if you don't know, military teens, we move around a lot. On average, a military teen moves around 6 to 9 times in their life according to the Department of Defense. And while that number may not seem like much as a statistic, imagine having to rebuild your life 6 to 9 times. Imagine having to leave your friends, make new friends, leave your school, join a new school, join new clubs, join new sports, 6 to 9 times. That's a lot, and these kids, they need support. And when you're living on a military base, these people, they know what you've been through. But some military kids are not as fortunate to be living close to these communities. And that's why I believe positive online communities can be so important in connecting these kids, and that's what we do at Bloom. We have a lot of online content such as blog posts and relatable TikToks and funny social media posts that these kids can relate to and gain advice. And I believe doing this all online means that we can reach a larger number of people and create a community for these kids.
In your experience personally, do you feel like it's helped you as a military teen to be able to connect with people that aren't physically around you but can understand your experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. Me personally, I was moving during COVID from England to America, and I was really struggling with that because I couldn't make new friends. And that's really where I found Bloom, and I connected with these people. I stumbled across a blog post, and I was like, this really resonates with me. And I believe that is such a special thing that we do at Bloom, is that we can resonate with these military kids without having to be physically close to them.
Beautiful, thank you. Morgan, you're a marketing major and you're really interested in expanding representation for people of color online. Could you tell us about what you're hoping to do in your current work and in the future?
Of course. So I have kind of held a few roles, and one of them was recently an ambassador for Colleges for Rare Beauty, the makeup brand by Selena Gomez. And one of those things that I have been able to do is kind of use what small platform I do have to kind of talk about things like mental health and kind of just spread awareness about topics that aren't really talked about on HBCU campuses specifically. In the grand scheme of things, I'd love to work in the sports marketing space, and I think one of the big things that we're not seeing a lot of in that space is we see a lot of people who kind of put their bodies on the line every day for their job. And some of them deal with a lot of mental health issues and things that aren't really talked about because there's one way that they're supposed to look. And being in a space where if I can meet maybe become like chief marketing officer, working in the C-suite to make sure that those stories are being told, not in a way that kind of puts them in this vulnerable place that people can kind of attack them all the time, but being able to make sure that there's stories are being told in a way that represents them the best, but also the brand of whatever team they're playing for, whatever other organizations that they represent. So doing things like this now, being able to talk about my experiences with mental health kind of just growing as a young adult, the transition from college, like all these different things that are happening now allows me to become a better storyteller online and in the different platforms that are happening and like being used. And with marketing, one of the things that I've learned a lot about is a lot of what we're doing now is online. So you're not gonna see a whole bunch of marketing campaigns that are on paper anymore because everything is being transferred online. So if I can build that knowledge now and prepare myself to work in a world where 5 years from now, after I've graduated and I'm kind of trying to build my career, I'm more comfortable with the platforms that we're gonna be using, I can make sure that I'm telling the stories that I'm supposed to be telling, doing them in a way that puts the people that I want to talk about in the best light, but also making sure that the products that I'm putting out are representative of everyone, whether it's a little kid consuming that or just the person that we're talking about, putting them in the best light possible. So yeah.
In the vein of mental health as well, I think it's pretty well known that people in our generation especially really struggle with mental health, and it's really difficult to talk about that without also talking about the interconnectedness that it has with social media. So because social media in the digital world plays such a massive role in our lives, and they play a role in mental health in negative and positive ways, I wanted to ask Ronan, you've been open about how social media contributed to some struggles you've had with body image. What was your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So social media makes it very easy to access these influencers who might have unrealistic beauty standards, and seeing that and also being pushed into a darker place where you have these people who are like experiencing unhealthy eating habits or these kinds of eating disorders. Social media is very good at kind of pushing you down this rabbit hole where I keep scrolling and finding this triggering content. And social media is designed to do that. It's designed to have these rabbit holes. It senses this algorithm and makes you keep scrolling, essentially. So that kind of pushed me deeper and deeper into this community. And it was very hard. It got very difficult to be exposed to that kind of content. I would love in the future for these companies to have more algorithmic transparency with policymakers and researchers to kind of code for this content better, and instead of exposing us to harmful content, exposing us more to content from certified professionals in the field or overall healthier content, which leads me into how social media has actually helped me in that same vein when dealing with these eating disorders. So in my recovery, what has helped me so much is being a part of this community of people who advocate for a positive self-dialogue or sustainable, healthy habits, and feeling like I'm healing with other people and that I'm not crazy. These are really real issues that other people have also experienced. That has helped me so much find a community that fostered my growth and well-being. And I would love for this content to be pushed more. And I would love for content from certified professionals and those who have healthy, constructive ways of getting better. I would love for that content to be pushed more by the algorithms in the future. And I would love for overall just less pressure to be put on the users themselves, but more on the company. Because these rabbit holes, as I said, are designed by AI, and we can do, it is in our power to push healthier content as well. I think on top of that, for parents or healthcare providers, just overall being more knowledgeable about this content and what might be harmful, and having those conversations with these teens and these users of social media, having conversations about that content and being able to reflect and understand what content is harmful and what content is healthy overall. I think that's where I would like to see us go in the future.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
What you're saying reminds me of something that someone once said to me about New York, which is that everything good and everything bad is in New York. You just have to like know what you're looking for. And it really, like, that strikes me, it's a similar way, because I've had such a similar experience where I've really like COVID as well, I've fallen down into these really negative self loops through social media. But at the same time, if I was able to like refigure how, like, who I'm following and what is showing up on my For You page or whatever, then that, like, I've gotten so much wisdom and knowledge and advice from social media that's been really helpful. But it's exactly what you're saying. It's the algorithm. Because if you click on something and you watch it multiple times or you research it further, the algorithm's not necessarily going to know whether that content is harmful or healthy. It's just going to know that you watched it, so it's going to continue to give you more and more. And I think it's a really powerful force that we don't know how to deal with necessarily, because it's new and it's really unprecedented. Joseph, let's get to Joseph finally. You are an advisory board member for Born This Way Foundation, which is Lady Gaga's nonprofit organization focused on empowering and inspiring young people to build a kinder, braver world that supports their mental well-being online and in person. So with online bullying being a topic of concern that experts that we'll be diving into later this morning, tell us what you've learned about building kinder, more inclusive spaces online through your work and as an advocate with Born This Way Foundation.
Yeah, I would love to answer that question in two parts, where from a more personal perspective, I have built a career on social media. A lot of work I do, whether it's activism or content creation, is on platforms like TikTok, Instagram. And with that being said, I was exposed at a really young age to hateful comments and bullying online. And being 16 years old at the time, on social media getting, for every one nice comment, 10 mean ones, it was really challenging to be able to navigate that. And even with my parents, it was overwhelming, and they weren't really sure how to also move through that. And I felt like I was forced to kind of navigate that on my own. And in the same way, I feel like young people that are on social media, whether it's within their communities, with their families, anywhere online, they're also navigating that on their own. And it's something that we have to really work through. And with Born This Way Foundation, I've learned a lot about free mental health resources that young people can use. I think it's really, really important for young people to have access to free resources, because at the end of the day, therapy is very expensive, and having free resources is really powerful. And one that I've personally used is the Be There certificate, which is basically a free mental health course that anyone could take. I highly recommend it for both parents and young people, where you could learn from real scenarios with mothers and their sons, or friends and family, ways that people are able to navigate challenges in mental health. And you know, it's inevitable. 1 in 4 people are exposed to mental health issues, so being able to combat that before it happens is really, really important.
Definitely, thank you. I wanted to follow up as well that on the flip side of your work with Born This Way Foundation, you're part of the Latino community, where culturally there can be a lot of stigma around talking about or seeking help with mental health related issues. So how are you launching conversations and helping to build understanding around mental health in Latino youth as a young Latino creator and member of the TikTok Diversity Collective?
Yeah, well, for starters, coming from a Latino family, I would say there is definitely a stigma in mental health. There's often a mentality that one struggle might have to be like compared to someone else's. And I think that comes back to like when like our parents came to America and had trouble like assimilating and being able to find their spot and their place, they might feel that someone else's trauma might not compare to theirs. And I think that comparison shouldn't exist. I think everyone's issues and mental health, the troubles that they go through, are extremely valid, and we should be able to have a validity in that. And building off of that, I think it's really important how we use our words to be able to move forward and uplift each other. With young people, I think it's really impactful to use our words to uplift and inspire the new generations.
Absolutely. I wanted to open that question to all of you, actually, just around the stigma that might exist in your own families or in your own communities, and even with mental health, but also with social media technology use. Like, do you find that those intergenerational conversations can be difficult, or do you find that they're great and you learn something from it, and like the people you're talking to learn something from it? Is there any experiences you guys have had in that realm?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I've been fortunate enough where my family's pretty open with each other, so we're able to have those conversations. And I think my brother and I being really close in age allows for us to have those really kind of good conversations with our parents because he's 2 years younger than me. So what he's going through, I went through like 2 years before. So we can have those conversations and our parents are pretty much able to keep up with that. And they're both in a place where they're listening and hearing what we have to say. And I think one thing that I have found is I go to Howard University, and one of the big things there is you will find people from all different types of walks of life. And one of the major things is there are a lot of people who didn't have certain resources or people who had the resources, but it didn't fit them in the time that they went. So I think those are the conversations that I'm having to kind of navigate. It's learning how to kind of meet people where they are. I think that's a big thing. And with social media, especially in college, we're all trying to figure out, oh, who can I follow here? Like, what can I like here? What can I post that's gonna look good? So I think one of the big things is learning how to meet people where they are and have those conversations, because not everyone was exposed to things that I may have had the opportunity to be exposed to. So kind of just really learning as you go is one of the things that I've kind of had to learn about.
Absolutely. I wanted to follow up on that too, Morgan, is that you recently served as a youth council member at Active Minds, which creates innovative digital tools to support youth mental health. It's one example of the many ways in which more people are paying attention to youth mental health today. And do you think we've made significant progress in that?
So I serve as a youth leadership council member for MTV, Viacom, and Active Minds. And we just recently launched the ASK campaign, which stands for Acknowledge, Support, and Keep in Touch. And it's really supposed to be the new stop, drop, and roll of mental health support, because not a lot of people, it's a new conversation that people are trying to have, and not many people have the vocabulary to keep up a long-winded conversation about it. So giving something to anyone where they can kind of start is what we're trying to do. And a lot of the marketing that we've done so far is what I'd love to see more of. I think one of the big things now is, so it was just Mental Health Awareness Month. I think it's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month this month, and Pride, and all these different kind of awareness months that we're supposed to be aware of. And one of the things that ASK can help with is kind of what I said earlier about meeting people where they are. So having that small conversation where you acknowledge this is what you're going through, and then being able to support them. Support looks different for everyone, but being able to say, like, I'm listening. If you need me, that's how I can support you. Or tell me what you need from me in order to make sure that I'm the best person to kind of be there for you. And then keeping in touch is just sending that text message maybe 2 weeks later saying, how are you doing? Like, what do you feel about the conversation we had recently? So ASK is definitely the tool that I feel like is going to do a lot more than what I'm currently seeing. I don't want to say it like that, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I think growing that and being able to have kind of tools that I think Meta has with age restrictions for young adults and youth is something else that I really want to see more of. Just making sure that it's cognizant of the different demographics that are being involved, and the different kind of age groups. So putting all of that together, I will say, yes, we're going in the right direction. It's just kind of growing what the new things are and making sure that they're in a place where resources can continue to help them so they can help more people.
Definitely. I think that's something I've been noticing as our generation has gotten older, is that we're kind of learning that technology is a tool and you have to decide how you use it, which is really difficult when, as we talked about earlier, there's these algorithms that are kind of trying to funnel, like, you know, literally using psychological, I don't want to say tricks, but like psychological research to make sure that we are engaged in what the algorithm wants us to be engaged in, or whoever's like creating the algorithm wants us to be engaged in. So trying to establish that autonomy for yourself and using technology and social media as a tool for exactly what you're describing is important, and it takes willpower. Like, you really kind of have to be diligent about it, and that's something that I'm learning about myself is that addictive pattern is what exists, so how do I choose to work within that? And that takes me to something that I'm excited to discuss with you guys. There's a trend I've been seeing come up a lot on TikTok that's called a dopamine detox, which is like a scary phrase. It's kind of a scary phrase, but it just highlights how that in our world we've grown accustomed to the quick hits of dopamine, like the quick highs of things like maybe sugar or nicotine, but especially likes on social media or just constant content that it's always regenerating. And so I'm wondering if you ever find yourself stuck consuming content, and what would it look like to cut down on these quick technological fixes? Or do you even feel that's necessary, or you maybe don't feel like it's a problem? What are your guys' personal experiences with that?
Yeah, I would say that with social media, even working in social media where it's my job to constantly post content, it's really hard sometimes. And whether you're just consuming content, you get stuck in these rabbit holes like you mentioned. And sometimes it's really healthy to just take a break and step back and maybe realize, hey, these algorithms are sucking me into more and more content, and maybe I should just take a break, and whether it's deleting an app for a day, a week, whatever you need, just making sure you're taking that break that's necessary to be able to take care of your own mental health is super important.
And you found that that's been helpful for you?
100%.
Cool. Anybody else on the subject of dopamine detox?
Hopping on to that, something I heard a while back that I guess really struck with me is that this generation, we need to be okay with the thought of being bored. And I really think that it sounds, yeah. But I really think that in the sense that if we take a step back from social media, and like you said, social media can be a tool, and I personally use social media to advocate for military kids and for myself. There are very dark sides of social media, and that may not just be unhealthy content, but it may also be the amount that we consume and how we get sucked into it. So I really like, I guess, the topic that we brought around of, we need to take a step back and, maybe talk to policymakers about fixing that algorithm.
Definitely. Morgan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the things is sometimes it's easier said than done to take a step back because
Definitely.
we're constantly worried about we're going to miss something. And a lot of things now, especially on my campuses, a lot of the organizations have Instagram pages. And that's one of the major ways you keep up with what's going on instead of there being a group chat that everyone can kind of keep up with. So I think it can be easier said than done, but one thing that I found helpful is because a lot of it is, I don't want to say have to, but some of that information won't be accessible in other ways. One of the things that I have to do is make sure that I'm carving out time to find things that I can kind of center myself with. And that looks different for everyone, but Howard's in the city, so I can just go on a walk and be fine. And I won't turn my phone off, but put it on mute or do not disturb. I'm a do not disturb girl, don't. Yeah, I stay there. But having it there to make sure that even if it's a 10-minute walk down the street to get coffee is giving me a time away and a little bit of a reprieve from the constant kind of scrolling oh, this event is happening at 4, do I need to be back for that? Maybe not. So putting myself in positions where I can set myself up for success, maybe not by fully deleting anything or taking time away from it, but putting myself in positions where I'm doing something that brings me happiness or calm is something that I found helpful.
Definitely. And setting boundaries around your use, I think, is really, again, like you said, easier said than done, but something that it's a habit like anything else, it just takes time to build it. And so it's cool to see that we're all having some kind of a similar awareness of it, oh, maybe this is something I should be thinking about. This feels important. And I really, really want to get to this discussion, which is what would you, the parents and leaders in this room, as well as policymakers or tech industry leaders who may see this content, to know about your online lives today and what we as young people would want from digital spaces in the future?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. Like I said, I think that having these conversations are so important. Just in order to understand the kind of content that our youth is being exposed to today and the effects that it might have, I really think that it is important for whether it's the healthcare provider or the parent to be able to have that conversation about the content. And for these social media companies, I mentioned this before, but I wanted to reiterate this point. I want for the future for there to be less stress on the user, but more stress on the companies, because, like we mentioned, these rabbit holes are designed by AI, and it is very easy to push you into a dark place. And also just the other negative effects that it can have. Like we mentioned, the attention span. I feel like our generation is so frequently exposed to short form content that we don't even have the attention span to read a book or even watch a movie or something like that. So I definitely think that having those conversations is really vital moving forward.
Definitely. It's interesting when you said the thing about not having the attention span to like read a book or watch a movie. There's some laughs in the audience, and it's so interesting to me because that's a genuine conversation I have with my friends. Is like I'm feeling worried that I can't read a book for more than 10 minutes because I get out my phone without even thinking about it. Like it's a real thing that I think our generation is experiencing. Not that everyone doesn't experience it, but to the nth degree, because we're the only generation that's grown up with this at our fingertips since pretty much when we were born or like around our childhood. So I think it's an important conversation to have, an important thing to note. It's
like as I noticed my attention span decreasing, what I did to take initiative, I just read a book. I read a book. And I picked up reading, I picked up taking walks and taking mindful breaks from social media, and that's really done a lot to help repair that attention span and just help me feel more connected with the environment around me, and I think that's really important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've also realized that with books for a long time I thought I just wasn't a reader. I thought it wasn't for me. But then I realized that, hey, maybe I need to pick up an actual book, because with a Kindle, I'll see a notification from Instagram and I'm like, oh, I need to go there. But with an actual book, there's no distraction. So that was my little life hack.
I love it. I love it.
I also think that we as teenagers and younger people, I think that we are growing up in a digital world, and the future isn't getting less digital. So it's really finding the balance between taking initiative of our own lives and learning when to step back, and trying to balance, I guess, what our world is coming to. So,
absolutely.
I think I would say that there are a lot of misconceptions about like how social media affects different people, and it looks different for everyone. The example I keep using is like, a lot of things have been happening with like airplanes right now, and a lot of college students are going home. So that may be a stressor for them because they're worried like, well, is this the airplane that's gonna have an issue when I go to the airport? And I think one of the things that is super important, kind of what we've all talked about, is just having those open conversations and really listening and meeting people where they are. And I think the generational differences don't have to impact those conversations. They can definitely be a point of, this is where you are, this is where I am, how can we kind of like learn from each other? But having those open, honest conversations that really allow for you to listen and someone else to understand is something that I would really want to stress.
Definitely. In the time that we have left, is there anything you guys would want your parents to know, or people of that generation, or things you'd want my mom to know?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit on that.
Yeah.
So for my parents, they had a different upbringing. I'm really glad with the direction that society is going these days. We're having these conversations, even this event, things like that, didn't happen when my parents were my age. So I think it's very easy for them to kind of get lost and lose that perspective a little bit. But I think just generally having that perspective and understanding that mental health is just like our physical health. We need to look out for it, and it's important to take care of yourself in that way. So I would absolutely advocate for parents to become more educated and knowledgeable, and look out for the well-being of our youth.
Definitely.
I would probably say I just like appreciate the conversations that we're able to have. Like whether it's my mom, my dad, my brother, like any adult in my life, I just appreciate being able to say what I need to say. And even if it's not something that they can fully understand, I know that I'm able to say it and express myself in the way that I need to, and someone's going to be there to, I would just say, be a sounding board. So like, thank you to them for just allowing me to talk about the things that I need to talk about.
I would say one of my big takeaways is have these conversations with your kids and really listen to what they have to say and be an open resource for them, because you want your children to be comfortable coming to you with mental health issues, and for you to have validity in the issues that they're facing mentally, and being able to be a resource for them is super important.
Yeah, bouncing off of that, I really think we need to find the balance, well, you guys as parents, between showing your child that you trust them and showing them that they can come to you and they won't be berated, and that you will understand them and you will validate them, while also setting these boundaries to be able to keep them safe. So.
Beautiful. Well, that's our time. Thanks everyone for listening.